All right, folks, officials in Texas got an assist from Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito in temporarily blocking a court order to redraw 2 of the state's 36 congressional districts. On August 15th, a federal district court ruled that the state intentionally tried to weaken Hispanic voting power by preserving congressional districts held by Republican Congressman Blake Farenthold and Democratic Congressman Lloyd Doggett, both of whom are white. The court ordered state officials to draw an entirely new congressional map or provide the court with proposed remedies. In a request for an emergency stay of the order, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton argued that the state would have trouble meeting an October 1st deadline to provide voter registration certificates to election officials. Also, of course, what's happening in Illinois, they also have passed a law there allowing folks to vote on automatic voter registration. They're the 10th state in America to pass this kind of bill. And right now in North Carolina, they're still fighting over the redrawing of maps there. And so North Carolina Democracy North Carolina, they're still fighting that as well. And so we're trying to follow them on Twitter at Democracy, at Democracy NC, to keep it up to date what's happening there. But Republicans in North Carolina are doing their best to also, let's just be honest, screw the voters and to guarantee Republicans are able to move forward when it comes to holding on to state offices as well as congressional offices. Joining us right now is Kristen Clarke, President and Executive Director of Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Kristen, when it comes to this issue, look, these are very clear efforts by Republicans to hold on to power. There was a piece I saw yesterday in the New York Times how in Wisconsin they called in every Republican, had them sign a document, non-disclosure, to allow them to see these maps that were drawn utilizing algorithms that even though in the state Republicans got 46% of the vote in the state, they were guaranteed 60% of the seats, which basically can lock out Democrats forever.
You know, there's something strange when you have mid-decade or late-decade redistricting efforts underway in states in a way that we're seeing right now. Historically, states open up their districting maps at the start of a decade when you have new census data that provides an accurate picture of the population that you're working with. So I'm deeply suspicious of this pattern that we're seeing across the country where, without basis or need, states are opening up their maps. There's a war underway when it comes to voting in our country. The development out of Illinois, where they've pushed forward automatic voter registration, is certainly something to celebrate. This now marks a moment where we have bipartisan support for automatic voter registration, and I'm encouraged by the fact that we're seeing some good things happening among the states. Texas, however, is another story. This is the belly of the beast. In the last 4 weeks, 4 courts now have found that state officials engaged in discrimination in the context of redistricting. They continue to resist their photo ID law, and they've now dumped more than $3.5 million of taxpayer money into standing by a discriminatory law that is rejected over and over and over again by the courts.
Spencer Overton, you're the author of the book, Stealing Democracy, The New Politics of Voter Suppression. This is, I mean, look, this has been going on now clearly for more than a decade. Right. But to be perfectly honest, this has been the case since the 1965 Voting Rights Act.
No, that's right. And before the Voting Rights Act, I mean, politicians were excluding black people to maintain power, right? This is about maintaining power and control in terms of the redistricting piece that Kristen talks about. Also, I think we can't discount this automatic voter registration and the importance of it. Most of the people who don't vote are not registered. Registration in and of itself is a significant barrier to voting. So big win in Illinois.
Eugene, I don't understand. The Republicans want this to be a democracy. Why keep blocking votes from voting?
Yeah, I don't support voter suppression in any way, shape, or form. I'm a proponent of, get the voters registered and then both parties fight out for the value of the vote. I think what's going on in North Carolina is bad. I think what's going on in Texas is bad. I think what's going on in Maryland is bad with our congressional districts.
Great.
Well, I mean, how much of this is really just delaying something that's inevitable? All those voting rights cases that Spencer talks about, Baker versus Carr, all this stuff was a Texas battle. So when we hear, what Kristen, what you all are doing, what we see is this is just a temporary thing. I mean, how much of this is going to be fought in the courts, and how much of this is about voter education, getting people who are eligible to register, so that your work is even easier because people just vote.
Absolutely.
Kristen, real quick, speaking of fighting, talk about real quick what the Lawyers Committee did when it came to shutting down one of the white supremacist websites.
Well, look, Charlottesville happened in part because white supremacists have found a haven online to help organize their members and to incite people to violence. And one of the main spaces or staging grounds for a lot of that dangerous and vicious organizing activity is Stormfront, stormfront.org. This is a site that has been up for more than 2 decades. They've got more than 300,000 registered members that stretch not just here in the U.S., but across the globe. And their members have been linked to deaths of African Americans, of Sikhs, of protected minority groups, and we're pleased that we shut them down. The Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law reached out to the web host that provided a platform for Stormfront. They have an acceptable use policy that prohibits users from engaging in conduct that might result in harassment or discrimination, and we gave them 1,000,001 examples of how Stormfront members were using that site to incite and inspire racial violence. They've been shut down since Friday, and their members are in a tizzy because they have nowhere to go. There have been talk about Stormfront rallies, and now they've got to look somewhere else.
The work is not cheap. Let folks know how can they give to the Lawyers Committee.
They can donate to the Lawyers Committee by going to our website, www.lawyerscommittee.org. We are fighting harder than ever. The injustice and discrimination and the rollbacks that we face are great, so we can use the support now more than ever.
Weekdays on TV One.
I will never lie to you.
Oh my God.
Roland Martin.
He doesn't want to talk to us. He wants to ignore us.
Uncensored.
Hell no.
That ain't gonna cut it, boo.
Unapologetic.
No, that is fundamentally false. You are wrong.
Unfiltered.
He wants an America where we all look alike. He ain't talking about black people.
Unrelenting.
You better go work out, because you got a fight on your hands.
NewsOne Now with Roland Martin. Weekdays at 7 a.m. on TV One.